Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me on another Sunday night here at Poe on the Go. I hope everyone's doing great. We're waiting on Nasty to get in here. He is up by the Canadian border right now, making his way to a location where he gets the best possible stream he can. So apparently, he doesn't have the best of Wi-Fi or signal while he's up there. So we're waiting for him to get in here, but you know how we start this. As always, let's bring in our old buddy Clearwater Chad. Hey, Chad, how we doing tonight, bud?
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. We'll get right to work because we got a lot of work to do. 75 and sunny, Poe. 0% precip. 65 humidity. Roscoe advises you from the Sky Chopper that the wind's at 8, Poe. Back to you, Poe.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, he got me a little bit earlier. Playing around, jumping up, trying to grab something out of my hand. Let's see. Okay, just seeing who all's in here tonight. Let's see here.
Since we're just getting started, everyone go ahead and make sure they're subscribed to Clearwater Chad.
Yeah. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Clearwater's channel. He's doing some good stuff over there. Always, he's a friend of ours here on this channel, so we always make sure we have him in on part of our streams, if not all of it. Let's see. We got Gustina Beefers. Howdy. Welcome to the channel. Mojo, what's up, brother? Did you get my Facebook message? Let's see. From a Poet, what's up, man? Daniel Sander. And you're going to have to tell me sometime how to pronounce this name, because I am so worried I'm going to butcher that. Grand Theft Hoopty. Let's see here. Who else we got? Funny IRL clips. Grand Theft Hoopy. Colonel Brock, what's up, brother? Did you get my my message on Facebook? Annie Kurtz. Goldie, Boss Mama's in tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Yep.
Let's see. Melanie Gonzalez. Hey, Melanie, thank you for joining us. And Hada. Nerman, what's up? Juliana, how are things down in Brazil? I know if it's hot as it is here today, you guys got to be much hotter than we are. All right. Yep. Let's see. Tracy Danaberg. Irma. Hey, Irma, what's going on? TBI firefighter. Let's see. Look, some new faces in the crowd tonight. Hey, Gary, what's going on, brother? And, of course, y'all see we got the infamous Clearwater Chad. Now, I know you're going to talk more about this when Nasty gets here, but I understand you went out and did your very first First Amendment audit there, Chad.
That's right, Poe. It was a lot of fun. Everyone was pretty respectable. I had a couple people beeping at me and stuff, but everyone pretty much did respect my First Amendment privilege to be outside taping in a public forum.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun though. People joined on the chat. I'll have to pick some better locations, but I like the gas. I was at a gas station, and people, it was fun though. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you start off, low-hanging fruit where it's close to you and where you can see what's going on a little bit easier, something that you're familiar with, a little bit less controversial of a location for your first one. So, and tonight, basically what we're doing tonight is we're going to be doing basically a beginner's guide into the world of First Amendment auditing, which is, one of the reasons why, talking with Nasty and seeing all the things that he does, let's get a pro in here to help us out with those things and make sure that we're doing things the proper way. And there's a few things I wanted to go over. And when we're looking at First Amendment auditing is a social movement that usually involves photographing or filming from a public space. It's often categorized by its practitioners, known as auditors, as activism or citizen journalism, and tests the constitutional rights the right to photograph, photo, and video in a public place. The legality of recording in a public place was first clearly established in the United States following the case of Glick versus Cunniff, which confirmed that restricting a person's right to film in a public place would violate their First and Fourth Amendment rights. So basically, in law enforcement for the longest time, it's been pretty much a clear case of if it is visible from a public space, then pretty much it's visible. Uh, a good example of that, I'm walking by and I look down into a car as I'm walking down the sidewalk. On the driver's seat of that car is a handgun. That is admissible because it is visible from a public space. I didn't have to, go on to private property or anything like that to see it. It was clearly visible and I could tell what it was. Let me see here. Yeah, my window's closed, but I can still hear those sirens out there pretty good. I live about the fire department exits the road that it exits on comes right up to the front of my house there. So we are able to, you know, use that as the basis if we see something that's a violation of the law and we can act on it. That is one of the things that we use is the visibility. It's the basically what it is if it's publicly visible, then that means anyone can see it, and then therefore it can't be considered a violation of a person's Fourth Amendment for unlawful search and seizure. And that's how, when I was talking, I believe it was with Chris Shelton, we were talking about some new technology that's out there that is available to law enforcement, where basically they can use uh, night vision or heat vision type of lenses or pieces of equipment, and they can see through the walls into a home. Well, problem is if the curtains are closed and you can't see in any other way and you have to use this device to do it, I personally believe that's a violation of the person's Fourth Amendment to unlawful search and seizure. What you're basically doing is you're doing a warrantless search. So on my viewpoint, that's going to be a violation of that person's rights. And so we have to, those are things you have to take very, very, you have to watch, because once you start violating people's rights, then, it's just one step away to the next violation. And you have to have a clear and consistent ethics and morality, especially in law enforcement. You can't do one of those, what's good for the goose, good for the gander kind of things. It's got to be everyone across the board, doesn't matter who they are. And you need to make sure that you're not violating people's rights, because it's, that's part of our job as law enforcement, is that we are upholding the rights of our citizens. So, what good are we doing if we're out there violating their rights? So Chad, tell us, you said it was at a gas station nearby you. Is that it?
Yep. Yeah, maybe 10 minutes away. But everyone was respectful. Like I said, a couple people were beeping at me and stuff, but I just told them to kick rocks, and we just went on with it. And besides that, everyone was okay.
Well, they were probably beeping because they were like, "It's Clearwater Chad."
Oh, it could have been.
Your infamy procedure there, sir. The wife and I went out to Ann Arbor today and just did some walking around in the street market stuff they got going on there. Then went and grabbed some lunch, and we got back. They got into the 80s today here, and from Michigan, that's pretty warm. So kicked out for a little bit there, and then my son came and got me, and he goes, "Hey, it's after 7:00." I'm like, "Oh, great!" So that's where we're at right now. Again, we're still just waiting on Nasty to get on in here. So, so I want to pull up a list I had made up, and basically it talks about the doing First Amendment audits and things like that. I had made an outline on it, and I was going to wait and go over that with Nasty and you as soon as I ever find it here. There we go.
Yeah, his friend in the chat, TDI firefighter, said he's coming soon.
Oh, okay. So let's see. All right. So I'm going to keep going back and forth on this. Grand Theft Hoopy, thank you for that super chat. Would you consider using thermal imaging to find Shelley Miscavige a violation of her Fourth Amendment? Yeah, unfortunately, that probably would be a violation. One of the big problems in this situation is, and I talked about this with a few people who actually knew Shelley. The big thing is that we don't know the status. And it's hard to basically, with Shelley and what's going on with her, you have people who say that they're in contact with her daily and she doesn't wish to be disturbed, as compared to the folks who are saying, we don't know where Shelly's at. We're worried about her. She hasn't been seen in this amount of time. What's happening with her? And the actuality of it is that when you're weighing things out, you have a person that hasn't talked to her in a couple of years. You have someone that says they talked to her just a few minutes ago. You've got to go by both statements and you have to weigh them out. Unfortunately, you can't go into it saying, I know what Scientology is like. You have to be bipartisan on things. You have to come in with an equal mindset. Because if you don't, that's one of those things that could end up hurting you. And I don't know if you can feel the chill in the air, but Nasty Nathaniel's here. What's going on, brother?
Live from the Canadian border. How you doing, Chad?
Excellent. Thank
John?
you for joining us.
Scientology is evil.
Yeah, yeah, you were in my stream.
Yep.
So it's just drawing it out a little bit till you got here. So
yeah, I apologize for the delay. I obviously I didn't forget about it. I was just in the Peace Arch Park doing a live stream, showing people the border and kind of explaining how it's set up. And I just didn't think that it was getting this close to 5. And I actually asked my audience. I said, can somebody please put the time in the chat? And somebody said it was 4:45. I'm like, oops, time to go.
Got to bust and run, son. So, but thank you for joining us. Really been looking forward to this one. So,
yeah, thanks for having me.
So, I don't know if you'd heard yet or not, but your boy Chad there did his very First Amendment audit.
Yeah. He was. You were telling me something about that, Chad.
Yep. I tried to do it like you, where I say Scientology is evil and tell people to hit the, hit the rocks or whatever. And people were pretty peaceful. It was just because I'm just getting my feet wet. It was at a gas station, so just a couple people beeped at me. Everything else was pretty peaceful. That's
cool. Well, hey, like I said, before you dive into deep water, you gotta dip your feet in the shallow pond first.
Oh yeah, that's like we were talking about. You got to start somewhere familiar, start somewhere where it's going to be a little bit easier for you to get your feet wet there. Let's see here. Danny Crook says he watched you almost cause an international incident earlier. What happened?
No. Basically, what it was, John. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Peace Arch Park. I'm in Blaine, Washington right now, this is the last city on the U.S. side before you hit Canada. Basically, Blaine, Washington borders Surrey, British Columbia, and there's a park called Peace Arch Park, and it's an international park. And without getting too technical, basically, part of the park is in Washington State, and part of the park is in British Columbia. So, and the way there's an agreement between Canada and the United States that people from both countries can go to either side of the park and can cross the border without having to clear customs and immigration as long as you stay in the park. Oh, okay. So like somebody from the United States could cross the border, could go to Peace Arch Park, walk in. Yeah, see how it's kind of like an L shape?
Yep.
You can cross the border, walk over to the BC side of the park, the Canadian side of the park, without having to go through Canada Border Services, as long as you stay in the park boundary. And so I walked over to the Canadian side and was showing people, kind of how you do that. And and plus saying stupid, not really an audit, but just kind of doing something fun.
Just doing a live stream from a unique location.
But I do have videos on my. Oh, sorry, Chad. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I didn't know you were that close to me. Are you coming? If you're coming back this way to like Buffalo, Niagara Falls, let me know.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Well, you're all the way over on the western side of the country, right? The western.
Yeah. I'm in Washington State now.
I thought I heard you say Canada or something.
Yeah. No, he's way over there, straight up from. Oh my gosh, how far are you from Seattle?
I'm about 2.5 hours north of Seattle right now. I'm right up on the Canadian border. Like I'm in a Starbucks in Blaine, and I look out the window. I can see Canada. I mean, that's how close I am to it. But I did want to say real quick, I do have videos on my channel that I've filmed at Peace Arch Park. There's actually a handful of them. That if anybody's interested. Actually, if you just go on YouTube and type Nasty Nathaniel Canada, they'll pop up.
Let me turn this fan on.
Nasty has a lot of great videos. The one at the gun range, the one there's so many, the tattoo parlor one, even the Ford dealership ones, the Scientology ones.
Yeah, the guy who I don't know claimed to be an attorney wanted to front you out there at the Ford dealership. That was an interesting one.
Oh, that was the Porsche dealership. That was the Porsche dealership.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Ford, Porsche, close enough.
Let's see.
That's
Just
funny.
checking out what we got over here in the chat. So, basically, I did I'll read them off to you again. Basically, these are the definitions I'm hearing for First Amendment auditing. Is a social movement that usually involves photographing or filming from a public space. Is often categorized by its practitioners, known as auditors, as activism or citizen journalism that tests constitutional rights, the right to photograph and video from a public space. The legality of recording in a public place was first clearly established in the United States following the case of Glick versus Kuneff, which confirmed that restricting a person's right to film in public would violate their First and Fourth Amendment rights. How's that sound?
That sounds pretty much spot on.
Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to start off, make sure we got some definitions in there and everything. How much of the history do you know about the First Amendment auditing movement?
Well, when I think back to the early days of First Amendment audit, first of all, it's a completely different scene now from even when I first started. I started doing this in 2015, and it was a much smaller movement. You didn't have near as many channels as you have now. Like even some of the big channels, the really big First Amendment audit channels that are around now, like back when I first started, none of those people existed. You know, there was no James Freeman, there was no Johnny 5-0, there was no Furry Potato, there was no SCV News First. I mean, it was a it was a much smaller community. There just wasn't, like in my area where I'm from, which is the Central Coast of California, which is Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties. That pretty much makes up the Central Coast. There was nobody that did this. There were no First Amendment auditors. There were no cop watchers. It was just me. You know, and even there's not too many other people, but even some of the people from that area that are around now, like, you know, there was no Slow Observer, there was no 805 Cop Watch, there was no Katie Kidman. You know, it was just me. And the biggest difference between then and now is that when I first started doing this back then, 2015, 2016, you know, I would go do these First Amendment audits, and people just did not know what was going on. I mean, now most of the cops in that area get it because they all know who I am. As soon as I show up, they're like, "Oh, that's Nathaniel Plotner," you know. But back then, I mean, they didn't know what I was doing, so it was way more sketchy back then, because, you know, all they saw was a guy dressed in black filming police cars and stuff, and they just didn't know what I was doing. So it's a completely different scene. But I know I'm kind of going off the rails, but. You know, when I think one of the original First Amendment auditors, I mean, if I'm going to think of someone, and I do throw around the word legend kind of loosely, but I would say there's a channel called Honor Your Oath. His name is Jeff Gray, and he's actually credited for coming up with the term First Amendment audit. And that guy has been doing it forever. I mean, I don't know what year he did his first audit, but I know it goes back a ways. And Jeff Gray, you know, his channel's called Honor Your Oath. He's really like one of the original First Amendment auditors, and he's been an inspiration to a lot of people in this movement. Definitely, you know, an inspiration to me. But you know, he's from Florida, and so, I mean, I think he probably did his first video maybe like 2009, 2010, but I could be off on those dates. But he was doing it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is he was doing it before it was a thing. You know, now, you know, so many more people know what First Amendment auditors is. Like, you know, it's not really, you know, it's not like a thing where people are like, oh, what's that? You know, or back when he first started, or even when I first started in 2015. People just didn't know. They were like, what are you doing? So, I would definitely check him out. He's one of the original.
Yeah, I just put the link in the chat there for everyone, and I see he's got videos. I was seeing him go back as far as 8 years ago on there. So that's we got Ghostina Beefers. This is the first time I'm hearing about a First Amendment auditor. It's been around for a while now. It's not new, but it's certainly picked up a lot of steam in the last few years. I think also among, you've got so many people nowadays have the cell phones to record everything with their cell phones. It's kind of hard to really catch people off guard when you're doing First Amendment auditing anymore, because everyone's so used to being videotaped or having cameras on them in public places. So that's, it really, it surprises me how people still get angry about it. So when we're talking about it, we're, of course, it goes under the First Amendment rights, but also it falls under the Fourth Amendment as well. And a lot of people don't understand that under the Fourth Amendment, where you're talking about the right to unlawful search and seizure, those different kinds of things, where it establishes a borderline with the actual public spaces and how that they are different from in your own private space. And a lot of people don't understand that. You walk into some place like a Walmart or something like that. How do those compare to standing on the sidewalk and filming something that's, from a sidewalk, from an actual clear public space? Do Walmarts, those kinds of big chain stores and things like that, are they different because they're generally considered a public kind of space inside of them?
Well, I mean, the biggest difference is that, like, let's say I'm auditing a Walmart, and I'm standing on the public sidewalk. Well, a public sidewalk is a traditional public forum.
Right.
But once I step onto the parking lot or go inside the store, I'm no longer in a traditional public forum. Now I'm in a non-traditional public forum. Right. So there's a guy that I like to, I've gone out with. He's a friend of mine, and he's a First Amendment auditor. He's called Anthony X. He's up in Northern California, but and I've audited. I've done a number of audits with him, and he's a great First Amendment auditor. But one of the things that he likes to do, and he'll even do this with private companies, is he likes to go on the property, and his I don't want to say argument, but his reasoning for it is like, okay, well, let's say it's a Walmart. He'll go on there and he'll start recording, and he'll be like, okay, well, if they ask me to leave, I'll just leave. And
right.
And I get that, but here's the thing, like, my whole thing when I do a First Amendment audit is I'm exercising my right to record in a public space, whether it's a police station, a military base, a Chick-fil-A, a hot dog stand, whatever it is. I'm in a public space. I'm in a traditional public forum. I'm allowed to record what my eyes can see. I have a right to do that. I'm exercising that right. Once I go on to private property, I no longer have that right. Right. So to me, then it gets to a point where it kind of defeats the purpose of the First Amendment audit, because I don't have a right to, like, walk into this Starbucks here and start recording people. Right. I do have a right to stand on the public sidewalk in front of the Starbucks and record what's going on.
I think it's a real gray area on it, because anyone who's in the public is free to and welcome to enter into those places. Mm-hmm. And I find it really interesting that they act like this is a public place and they want everyone to come in. But you go in there and you're doing something like that, or you call them out on what they're doing, then suddenly, well, this is private property. I understand, like, if it's a mom and pop kind of store or a restaurant or something like that, that'd be different. When you're talking about these big conglomerates where anyone can just walk in at any time, that's the things I find interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see here. And see, like, I just posted a link. A friend of mine has a channel called The Suburban Beard. And what he does is he goes around places like Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, places like that, and find these incredible sales that are going on that a lot of people don't know about. And he goes in and publicly films in these places. And I can't remember a time I've ever seen him actually being confronted about being filmed and there being any kind of problem. So that's where I find it interesting is that they don't have a problem with people coming in that are showing their sales and things like that. But if you're not expressly there for that, then suddenly there's some kind of problem with it, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because look at like a place like Disneyland, or something. I mean, people take photos and videos at Disneyland all the time. Disneyland is private property; it's not a traditional public forum. Now, if I went to Disneyland with my camera or cameras and started just taking random photos and videos of the whatever the rides or whatever's going on. Nobody's probably going to say anything. But if I was at Disneyland and let's say I started filming, a security checkpoint or something like that, then they're probably going to, oh, hey, And by the way, I have audited Disneyland before.
Yeah, I bet that was such a tough one for you.
It was interesting. Yeah.
I'm auditing Space Mountain right now. Let's see here.
Yeah, or Pirates of the Caribbean.
Aaron, can I ask him a question? Area 51, you can't fly in drones because it's restricted airspace. What about signs that say no photography either? Can you really film there if you wanted to? I'll hit on that one from both the military perspective and law enforcement perspective. An area like Area 51 is a military installation, and a lot of laws are different when it comes to those kinds of places because Area 51 generally deals with the classified kind of equipment or programs that are going on. They fall into a completely different zone. And one of the reasons why that they are shut off like they are and it's illegal to photograph, trespass, or even fly a drone over the space is because if they didn't have those kinds of precautions in place, what's to stop, say, China from doing it? What's to stop Iran from coming over and doing something there? We already have the problem with the big balloons that are going over that they've already shot a few of them down. It's basically the same thing. So those fall under national security, and they're a little bit different than traditional public spaces. And folks, just a side note, if you want to ask a question, just go right ahead and ask it, but put it at the beginning of it at the @ symbol and then Poe on the go. So I know that you're asking a question for one of us, and I'll try to get on here as quickly as possible. Your thoughts on that?
Well, and just so Area 51 has been audited before, not by me, but people have gone out there and have done First Amendment audits of Area 51.
Right.
If you search it, I can't. I don't remember the last person that went out there, but I know if you type in Area 51 First Amendment audit, the videos will come up.
Yeah, there's actually a gentleman, I believe his last name is Clark, who lives not too far from where is it where they have all the stuff in New Mexico, Roswell.
Yeah, Roswell.
He actually had a place there around Area 51 where he knew the best nooks and crannies you could get into and actually film from Area 51. It's just, if it falls under national security, that's a different animal altogether from actual First Amendment auditing or something like that. So that's, just be careful when you're doing those kinds of things. That's one of the reasons why we were, I wanted to put this live stream together was so that folks knew this. Christopher Green, does upper management within a police force invite or like the auditors, or do they dismiss their findings? Me personally, as a chief of police, I never had a problem with it. I know that some folks, they get upset about it. They seem to forget that, when you're going in every day, you have your desk, you have your own little area there, and that's your space. No one else goes in and messes with it, things like that. They start feeling like it's their own private space. As a law enforcement executive, I always looked at it as we have to uphold the rights of the Constitution, the rights of our citizens as well. There are certain areas within police departments and city halls that you definitely can't go in and film because the personal information of citizens is available there. I've seen folks go in to do First Amendment audits, just walk behind counters, start opening drawers, and start photographing files within cabinets and things like that. And those are areas where you're actually going to get into violating someone else's rights. So you need to, be very careful how you're doing those kinds of things. But I, as a law enforcement executive, I've never had a problem with First Amendment auditors unless they're the ones that come in, start yelling and cussing at everybody, demanding things be done. You come at me civil, and I'm more than happy to work with you and try to help you out best as I can. It's just, don't come in and start screaming at my elderly secretary, start cussing at her and calling her all kinds of horrible names. Then yeah, we'll have a little bit of a problem at that point. So what is your experience there, Nathaniel, with upper management law enforcement?
Well, I'll give you an example. This is something just recently. I actually recently emailed. I reached out to the chief of police, a guy named Jeff Smith with the Pismo Beach Police Department, which is a city up in my area, up on the Central Coast. And I reached out to him, and I actually thanked him for I forget how I worded the email, but I basically mentioned that I've had some really positive encounters with his officers, and that they seem to be very professional and understand and respect my right to record in public and so forth. It was, again, I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but it was something it was along those lines. And he actually emailed me back and said that he thanked me for the email and told me that he said that his officers have said to him that they like the way that I do my audits, that something about how they like how I don't try to escalate or the situations, and that they appreciated what I do and the way I do it. And he ended the email by saying, "And hey, if you ever see me out and about, come over and say hi." And he said, "You're more than welcome to film me, and our conversation." So that was just like a month ago. So that's an example of a positive kind of some positive feedback. But obviously, I think a lot of it just depends on the department and who's running the department, who the chief is. I know for a fact that there are police officers that don't like it. Mm-hmm. There's one in particular right in Santa Maria where I live. I won't say his name, but the guy is just a bastard. He treats me like I'm a second-class citizen and just acts like a total screwball. The encounters that I've had with them.
Jealousy is a horrible thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's an example of somebody that obviously, for whatever reason, doesn't, maybe he's had bad interactions with other auditors. I don't know. But so I think a lot of it just depends. I think it depends on the individual officer, the department, who's leading the department. And obviously I can't speak from a law enforcement perspective because I've never been law enforcement, but I've had, hundreds of interactions with police officers in various jurisdictions, and I think that's my personal belief.
Yeah, like I said, I've never really had a problem with it unless they come in with that whole confrontational attitude. And I make it very clear, you can't come in this area, you can't film here. There are certain things like the NCIC, National Criminal Information Computer Database. You have, in Michigan, it's called LEAN, Law Enforcement Officers Information Network. There are very specific laws that say that anyone who hasn't been through training and been certified to actually access those systems, they can't be there and view what's on those screens. And I make it very clear that you can't film from this area because you have the ability to see on these computers, and oftentimes those computers, you can't just walk over and turn them off. You can't go over and turn the monitor off. you can't change to a different page on the browser, because it has to stay constant, because you're constantly receiving messages and things like that over that system. And I make that very clear. These are the lines you can't cross. You cross these lines, you're out of here. Otherwise, you're free to ask questions. You're free to talk to anyone you want to, but let's remember, these are the boundaries that you have to stay within. And I try to always try to make that clear. And I never had any problems with any of the auditors that came in to see me. So it's always been something that I've never had a real problem with. Let's see here. Next up, boundaries. You want to talk a little bit about the boundaries of, we had started touching on it with the Walmarts and things like that, but boundaries of what constitutes public space as compared to private property. Can you stand in the road, things like that?
Well, I think that personally, I think the most important thing that anybody who wants to get into this needs to understand is, first, they need to understand the difference between I know we kind of touched on this earlier, traditional public forum, non-traditional public forum. And for an example of, let's say, a post office, filming a post office from a public sidewalk. Well, a public sidewalk is a traditional public forum. You have an absolute right to be there. Now let's say you go and you film in the lobby of a post office, which yours truly has done. I've done it. The problem with that is, and I know a lot of First Amendment auditors will probably shake their heads at this, but the lobby of a post office, although it's open to the public, it's not a traditional public forum. So being that it's not a traditional public forum, now time, place, and manner restrictions come into play, and so then it becomes like a real kind of gray area, where like, okay, yeah, the lobby of a post office is open to the public. I mean, yeah, you can physically walk in there and start recording, but then because it's a non-traditional public forum, again, time, place, and manner restrictions, or I'll even take it a step further. A lot of people like to argue Poster 7. People think that Poster 7 gives you a right to film in a post office. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I'd love to be able to say that it does, but it doesn't, because, if you read Poster 7, it says on there, something to the effect of, photography is allowed. I mean, I'm not wording it verbatim, but it says photography is allowed unless directed by the Postmaster General or any, postal official. So basically what it comes down to is, you can film in the lobby of a post office unless we tell you not to, and again, it falls back on time, place, and manner restrictions. That's why I just like being on a public sidewalk. I think it's the safest place you can be. It's a traditional public forum. You have an absolute right to be there. Jeff Gray from Honor Your Oath, the guy I mentioned earlier, he old school auditor. He's a total public sidewalk guy. I think he even says it. How does he word it? He said something like a public sidewalk. When you're auditing on a public sidewalk, it's like that golden pathway. Now, not to say that First Amendment auditors, haven't been hemmed up on a public sidewalk. I mean, I got my head slammed in the concrete by the chief of police on a public sidewalk. So, I mean, but I believe that doing a First Amendment audit and being on a public sidewalk is the safest place you can be, because again, it's a traditional public forum. You have an absolute right to be there.
And I think, like you were saying, getting slammed by that chief of police into the sidewalk, that's one of those things where it falls under education. And also falls under that whole attitude situation of I'll be the first to admit, there are people that are in law enforcement who feel that because they wear that badge, they are above any kind of scrutiny and no one has a right to question it. I think that wearing that badge makes you more accountable than most people do. Unfortunately, it's, folks that I've worked with in law enforcement, and I'll tell you, I've been pulled over. There are certain cities, it doesn't matter if you're a cop or not. You get pulled over in that city, they're going to treat you like you're a piece of crap no matter what. And
wow.
I've had, I had an interaction. I was on one of the freeways. I was hauling a trailer and I didn't realize it, but at some point the cable that runs the lights and brakes on my trailer had come apart. A friend of mine helped me hook the trailer up, and he twisted the lines up too much. So the minute I went around a corner, they disconnected. I get pulled over, and this guy comes walking up, and he just starts yelling and screaming at me right off the bat. And I'm like, hold up, son. I don't know if you know who you're talking to. At that time, I was the executive lieutenant with the department I retired from. I'm like, I don't know if you know who you're talking to, but, you know, you need to stop with that right now. And he just kept going at it. And finally, I looked at him and I said, look, here's my license. Here's my registration, my insurance. Either go back and write me an effing ticket or shut the F up. But you're not going to stand there and scold me, and you're not going to talk to me like this. The guy absolutely went ballistic until his command officer called him on his cell phone. He's like, hey, you do know that you're talking to a lieutenant from one of the cities that we border, right? And suddenly his attitude changed a bit. But, you know, there are just cops that are just, they think that their whole attitude comes from that badge that they're wearing. And I think that falls under that, what I've talked about in the past, where the badge doesn't make the man. The man has to make the badge, or the officer has to make the badge. So you're going to come into that. But hitting on the post office, I think that's one of those things that's really kind of a gray area to me, because it's a government institution, but it's not a government institution at the same time. I've always found that so interesting, that the post office has all the rights and authorities of a government institution, but still not considered a government institution.
Yeah, it's really kind of strange when you look into the, you know, if you read about the post office, you know, yeah, it's kind of like it's part private, part government entity. But you know, even with even with government facilities, like let's say I don't know, like the passport agency, or you know, a federal courthouse or something like that. You know, again, you know, it goes back to that whole traditional public forum, non-traditional public forum. Even when you, like, let's say you walk into the lobby of a federal building or whatnot, you know, it's, I mean, I'm not saying I think it's wrong to film in those places, but, you know, if you're worried about getting hemmed up, you know, it's something you got to keep in mind. It's a non-traditional public forum. And what they're going to come back at you with is they're going to say, well, yeah, let's say, you know, yeah, the passport office. It's open to the public for people conducting business here. You know, so if you're applying for a passport, renewing your passport, you know, whatever, you know, but somebody that just walks in and starts recording. And again, I'm not saying I think it's wrong. It's just, you know, if you're worried about getting hemmed up, just remember you're in a non-traditional public forum. Just because it's a government building doesn't, you know, time, place, and manner restrictions. Yep. And I learned that from Merv, who's an attorney. He's an attorney from Sacramento. He's got a YouTube channel. It's if anybody wants to check him out, it's called Merv, MER34ST. You know, Merv Beast. And MERB34ST. And you know, he goes into great details. He's done videos about this, and he gets a lot of flack from auditors. He gets accused of being a troll, but you know, I know personally, Merv personally, and you know, his original intent was to help First Amendment auditors, to help First Amendment auditors understand things like the difference between traditional and non-traditional public forums. You know, so auditors wouldn't get arrested, and so they wouldn't catch cases, and you know, and so forth. But
excellent. And folks, I just put that link up for Merd's website there, his YouTube channel. So if you get a chance, check it out. I think that's always something that's good to have, is, you know, an attorney who's there to help, especially in something like this, because it's such a gray area for a lot of people. But, you know, we were just talking about the history of it. I think it goes back a little bit further, because it goes back further because I think it also falls under the right of journalism and the constitutional right of the news. And, you know, a lot of people, they just look at it like, oh, well, you're not really, you know, when you're out there recording and you're filming for the purpose of broadcasting or investigating into something as a news article, whether or not you're actually hired by a news agency or not, you can be a citizen journalist and report those. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that. And I think that's something that, you know, is also needs to be looked at. You wouldn't look at someone from like the Times or USA Today that comes in and says, well, I'm a reporter with that. You don't see them getting the same kind of blowback as First Amendment auditors do. So have you
Yes,
ever been
exactly.
somewhere where you've seen actual reporters on scene and seen them not, you know, see them get treated differently than you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that, especially when I lived in LA. You know, I mean, I remember one time I actually had a conversation with one of the news reporters, a guy from KTLA. They were at Union Station, and I've done audits. I've filmed inside a Union Station and have been hassled, but definitely didn't see this reporter from KTLA getting hassled. You know. So yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely so. Because a lot of people, you know, don't see that, they don't look at us as, hey, these are citizen journalists or independent journalists, or, you know, a lot of these people probably don't even know what the definition of a true journalist is. You know, they think, oh, a journalist is someone that works for a major, you know, media outlet, like you know, the LA Times or whatever, you know, or KSBY News or what, you know. So they don't. It's just it's ignorance.
All right, folks. For those of you who keep asking about it, Nathaniel is up at the northern Canadian border in Washington State. He's at a Starbucks, which is the background noise a lot of you were asking about. So that was a place that had the best Wi-Fi he could get to in his area. So that's what's going on with the background noise. I see a lot of people asking about it. So
can everybody hear me okay?
You're coming in loud and clear. Yeah.
Okay.
We can hear like people slamming stuff around, moving trays and things like that. So I think that's what a lot of people are asking about with the background noise that's going on.
No, we're just happy you're with us.
Thank you, Chad.
Oh, yeah.
Nasty's my idol. Whatever he does, I want to do on the air. So you guys look for that. You guys look for all the stuff. Nasty
when you're
does.
looking for somewhere to audit, what do you look for in places that you're going to audit?
I mean, maybe it's just because I'm just kind of a weirdo in general, but I like to.
Aren't we all?
I always like to audit places that you don't see people auditing, places that you wouldn't expect somebody to do an audit at, like
marijuana dispensaries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, God, those places have been audited to death now.
Oh, have they?
Oh yeah. They're. I mean, like for example, I was the first person to start auditing places like car dealerships.
Oh, okay.
You know, I was the first auditor to audit hotels. I was, you know, and those places like that, to me were just like, well, no one's ever audited a car dealership before. Like, well, let's see how they react if we just show up and stand out on the sidewalk and start recording the cars. Yeah. And of course, I mean, you know, I found that what I found is it's, in a lot of ways, it's no different than any other place you audit. You're going to have some people that are going to be like, you know, a normal curiosity. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, okay. You know, and then you've got some people that are going to freak out and call the police. And, you know, and that's kind of the conclusion that I came to, is like, well, you know, that's why, to me, you know, I don't, to me, it's not really so much, what you're auditing. It's how you're doing it, you know, and, you know, obviously different auditors have different styles. Some are more aggressive than others, but, me, I simply stand in a public place and I record. You know, people are going to react the way that, like Chad, you mentioned earlier, the golf course. I mean, who would think that like auditing a golf course like that you'd get a reaction like that?
Yeah, almost every person that had an issue with it is like, wow, you know, just play your little golf and that's it.
Yeah, like why you wouldn't think that people would, or I wouldn't think that people would get so anal about it. But then it goes back to that whole thing. Like, why would people freak out over somebody filming cars? You know, and why would somebody, freak out over, I mean, especially things like cars. I mean,
People have so many
doesn't every guy like cars?
I know.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of people confuse their constitutional rights with the rights of others, and then the fact that they have not as much knowledge about the Constitution and the rights we have therein. And they start making statements, or they start building these beliefs in their minds that they somehow have a right to trump anything anyone else has because it's their right. And I think that that's where it comes from. I mean, personally, plus let's also remember people have bad days. I mean, there are days when someone wants to put a camera in my face. I'm not really in the mood for it. I try to be as civilized as I can about things like that. But, some folks, especially in the First Amendment auditing, some of them can be just as bad on either side of that camera and be just as rude. So that's one problem. You have a lot of people in the community who are clickbaiting, and they're intentionally starting confrontations that are, because they know it gets the most views. I thought it was pretty funny. You had the one the other day, the Karen at the hotel, and I was like,
oh yeah, at the Embassy Suites.
Yeah, I was like, my goodness, she's got to be about the nicest Karen I've ever seen on one of these. She was so nice and trying to be against you, but she tried to be nice about it the whole way. And I actually, at some point, I was like, honey, please walk away. It's in your best interest. You're not looking good.
Well, I thought the same thing too, until remember when she came back the second time, time around, and she gave me that flower, and she's like, you need to be nicer to people, and here's this. And at first I thought, like, okay, maybe she feels bad for the way she reacted or whatnot, and this is her own way of making up for it. I don't know. But then remember what she said after she handed me the flower, as she was walking away. She goes, and so this is how did she say, this is to help you with your masculinity.
Yeah.
And then she
with these folks, the one.
So I don't think she was really that nice.
Yeah, she was rude with a nice demeanor about her. So,
yes.
Like the one, go back home to your boyfriend. Hello, this isn't 2001. It's 2023. If you have a boyfriend and if someone has a problem with it, then it's their problem, not yours. I mean, how is that in any way supposed to be an insult?
Yeah, and not only is it 2023, but this isn't Snailville, Georgia. This is the Central Coast of California. Nothing against anybody from Georgia, but we're not in the Deep South. We're not in the Bible Belt.
Oh, this is a good one. This is from Anhata. And folks, if you haven't checked out Anhata's channel, she has started her YouTube channel. Make sure you get over there and give her a like and subscribe. Nasty Nathaniel, have you found wealthy neighborhoods react differently from middle or lower socioeconomic neighborhoods?
Yes. Like I've done audits in Beverly Hills, for example. And everybody knows where Beverly Hills is, and you get these people, that just, they have this silver spoon, stuck up there, what, and it's like they have this sense of entitlement, like, how dare you record me? How dare you record
as much as I am?
Yeah. How dare you record my pink Ferrari? It's just,
Well, give you an idea. Back in the day, there used to be a time when, say, you had someone who was intoxicated or something like that, you would see guys would actually put them in a police car, take them to another city, and drop them off. And these were your chronics who are out there and day in and day out, and they'd be causing problems. And you'd see guys we would find people coming in our city walking around we'd never seen before, find out they'd been dropped off by Detroit or some other department. And I remember one of our neighboring cities picked a guy up who was one of their local drunks, like Otis from the Andy Griffith show. And so they dropped him off in an area of Dearborn, and it was within a minute's time, they had 7 cars were surrounding this guy because they dropped him off in the area where they had the multi-million-dollar homes. But if you dropped him off in an area right over by the Detroit border where people didn't have as much money, you'd be lucky if they saw a car show up in a half hour. So, you know, I certainly understand how those things work. I mean, I've literally had people make comment to me, down, especially down in the high end areas of Florida. We would go to a store and people would be like, "You shouldn't. Why are you even on the road with that car you're driving?" You know, and they're showing up in their Bentleys or the Rolls Royces. So that's I certainly concur that sentiment that people in the higher income areas seem to think they have a little more rights than we do.
Well, I'll give you just real quick. Go ahead.
Okay. Has anyone ever sicked their dog on you?
Yes. There is a video on my channel. I think if you type in homophobic dog owner, I was actually with the Angry Gay Pope and a First Amendment auditor known as the Cameraman. And we were actually coming back from a protest. And it was in West Hollywood, the city of West Hollywood, which is, you know, probably the gayest city in America, or maybe even the world. I mean, and we were walking up Pope Street. We were going back to Pope's apartment, and there was this guy that I forget how it started. He had this dog. I think it was a pit bull. It was some feisty dog, you know. And I'm not talking about a Chihuahua. I mean, this thing was a decent sized dog. I mean, and I think Pope said something to him like, "Keep your dog on a leash," or there was some comment made, and the guy turned around and actually smacked Pope's camera. You know, didn't smack it out of his hand. You know, he had it around his neck, but you know, and then it went. You know, we went. Oh no, I remember what it was now. The guy let the dog take a poop in someone's yard. That's how it started. And somebody I think Pope made a comment to him, like, you know, about that. And but you know, it's a short video. I think it's only like 3 minutes long because it was mainly just that guy, and he started calling us the F word. And I'm not talking about the 4-letter F word. I'm talking about the 6-letter F word. And it's like basically, dude, you're in the wrong city to be using words like that. But the guy kept saying, you know, like, he didn't let go of the leash, but he let the dog like come right up to us, like within striking distance, and the dog was
Wow. Yeah.
And you know, that was you know, and at the same time, like I said, he was calling us the F word and saying that he's going to, you know, basically threatening to sick his dog on us. So
I've also found that people you least expect to be the most evil people generally turn out to be the ones that are. You know, it's the people who are namaste and I'm all about peace and everything, but they're the ones who light up like a friggin' firecracker the minute that they start getting upset. And I've always found that to be really interesting, how these people who seem so nice and polite and kind suddenly just turn into these raging monsters about stuff. How's your experience with things like that been?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I think it kind of goes back to that whole thing. It's like, you know, people, you know, I don't know, that the camera seems to bring something out of people. You know, it really does. I mean, I know that's kind of a generic way of putting it, but it really does. You know, you see people like, you know, well, like, for example, my dad, he's just a total bastard with a capital B. Can't say enough nice things about him.
I know how that feels.
People that don't know him, you know, like obviously like I know him or like my sister knows him, you know, think that he's such a nice guy, you know, and it's like, I tell you right now, my dad would be a total Darren. If somebody showed up at his, wherever he was, and he's retired now, but, you know, and started doing a First Amendment audit or somewhere that he was, like he would be the type to be a total Darren. Like he'd be the type to
Right.
come out and threaten the person, and I mean, you know,
On that same topic, something that a lot of people should realize if they're going to be doing First Amendment auditing is states that have the stand your ground laws. And something that should be taken into account is the fact that, some of these states where here in Michigan, you can't defend property with violence or with force, but there are other states where you can. And that's things that you need to take into account when you're going to plan on doing some kind of First Amendment auditing, is not only knowing your constitutional rights, but you need to know what your state laws are. And some states, you can be on the sidewalk, and if someone feels and can present that they feel you are a threat to their safety, you have to be very careful of that. So make sure you know the laws where you're working at, where you're doing these things, because it can get hairy pretty quick.
well,
Now,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, I was going to say just real quick on that is one of the things that's really popular amongst auditors in California is a lot of them like to carry pepper spray. I don't carry pepper spray, but you'll see all these audit videos where, Mr. Darren gets the sauce or something, basically referring to that they pepper sprayed somebody. And like there was one auditor, I mean, I won't say the name of his channel, but somebody spit on the windshield of his car and he got out and pepper sprayed the person. Wow. And I was talking to my friend who's an attorney, and he got arrested for it too,
Yeah.
And like my attorney friend was telling me, here's the problem. Like this is why he's going to get convicted. That's not self-defense.
Right.
Somebody spit on the windshield spitting on the windshield of somebody's car is, a messed up thing to do. But it's not self-defense. It's
dirty tactics. But the fact is that the person in that car has the ability to keep their windows rolled up, and there's no immediate threat to their safety, and he can just drive away. Getting out and pepper spraying someone, which can be considered a felonious assault in many states, because pepper spray has the ability to cause permanent damage to a person. So those are things you have to be very careful of. I know if I was to do, when I do my first time that I'm going to do my own First Amendment auditing, I'm definitely not going to be carrying my firearm with me. I don't want to present a situation where it can escalate the chances of violence. And
absolutely, yeah.
It has to clearly be understood. So go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing too, here's the thing, and I guess everybody's been asking me questions. Now I'm going to ask you a question, John. This is something that's always, I don't know if you want to say concerned me, but something that I've always wondered about. See, what's happening with a lot of these auditors that have, let's say they, let's say it's a case where it was in self-defense, like where some out of control security guard, tried to put their hands on an auditor and the auditor pepper sprayed him.
Right.
Let's say it was a legit case of self-defense. You have these situations where the police show up, they talk to them, they talk to the auditor, blah, 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 blah. And then the police end up arresting the auditor because they go, oh, well, the person you pepper sprayed wants to do a private person's arrest, or in some places they call it a citizen's arrest, And, now, okay, I'm going to get to the question. I'm going to shut up pretty soon. But I've looked into private person's arrest. And from what I've found, or at least for California, is in 2003, what is it, PC 142, which makes it unlawful for a police officer not to, I'm not using proper verbiage, but basically where it's unlawful for a police officer not to make an arrest when a crime was committed or something. Well, that was amended where it doesn't include private person's arrest. Like basically, and again, I'm probably not using the right verbiage, but basically what it says is when it comes to private person's arrest, the officer what they're supposed to do is first determine whether making such an arrest would be lawful, such as, I guess based on the evidence or witness statements or what, like, let's say like Clearwater Chad, accuses me of threatening to kill him. and he wants to do a private person's arrest on me.
Right.
Well, can the officer just show up and say, okay, well, this guy said you threatened him and he wants to do a private person's arrest, or so I'm going to arrest you? Or is the officer supposed to, go, okay, well, look,
Right.
Did anybody witness this? Is there a recording of it, or like what evidence is there to prove that? So basically, like when it comes to private person's arrest, can anybody just say, hey, I want to have this person arrested for this or that, or does there have to be evidence?
Well, the thing the thing about it is it's going to be different in every state. Here in Michigan, to effect a citizen's arrest, the person you're arresting has to have committed a felony. And you're going to need, one of the big things about it is you need evidence of that. You need to, show proof, somehow be able to prove that person's committed a felony, which would give you the ability to enact that citizen's authority to arrest that person. One of the things that folks need to remember is that, a lot of, with these security guards and everything, a lot of them have no actual training. They basically they get hired, they get given the uniform. They're told, this is your area, this is what you do. It's much different than, say a police officer who has to go through hours and hours and hours of legal training before you can actually get that badge and go on the streets as a police officer. Something that's going to hurt someone trying to do a citizen's type arrest, First Amendment auditor is probably going to have everything filmed, everything recorded, which is going to either substantiate that they did not commit the crime that the person's using their citizen's arrest authority on, or that the crime did happen. So it's generally going to be on those grounds. As a law enforcement officer, I always have a real question if I show up and someone says, I'm making a citizen's arrest. Do you know what the laws are? Do you know what your authority is to do so? Do you know what you can do to someone when you're doing it? Is by you committing a citizen's arrest, are you actually violating the law and committing a felony yourself? So there's a lot that goes into it. As a law enforcement officer, and I believe it holds true in every state, but it may not, but pretty much every state, if you show up and it's a misdemeanor activity that's occurred, the officer has the right to decide whether or not they're going to arrest, what they're going to do on it. They have that right to make that determination, as long as it's not a felony. Once it becomes a felony, things go out of your hands pretty well, because anything to deal with a felony is either some kind of major incident where it's involving the safety of others, or it's some huge financial burden that is being placed on society because of those actions. So,
okay, gotcha.
It's a long answer to it, but the problem is, like with a lot of laws, it really starts getting into gray areas and really starts milking the water. So let's see, Aaron, are there any states people can buy sidewalks so that it's no longer a public sidewalk? That's going to fall under like your HOAs and things like that, your private gated communities, where everything inside that community is actually privately owned and it's not a public sidewalk. But you're going to find those have gates, they have security around them, they have fencing all the way around that property, and it says clearly on it that private roadways, private property do not enter. Anything that is considered public space is going to be free and open for public to travel or convert across. They're going to be able to go through that area without any resistance or anything that's blocking them from doing so. But again, you're going to want to talk to an attorney because every state has different. I
actually have dealt with something like that. There was a place, God, what was the name of this company? It was a company that it was in a place in Redlands, California, which is down in the Inland Empire, and it was a company. It had something to do with, there was some kind of government contractor where they did like mapping for Google Earth or something like that. Well, anyways, there used to be a public street that went right up to the entrance of this facility, where you could, you could basically go right up to it and, film the main entrance. But then suddenly they put up there was just this. Originally it was just a generic barrier. There was
Right.
like a rope with cones that basically said something like "No trespassing, private road" or something. And my friend, who is a licensed attorney in California, you know, he right away went to work on that, and he's gone with me on audits before. And what he found out was it basically was a thing where this company petitioned the local government to turn this turn this road, because the road basically went through their, it dead ended at their property. So they basically wanted that section of the road. They wanted to take, I guess, ownership of that section of the road. So they basically, obviously I don't know what all the details are, but they petitioned the local government to basically grant them the rights to that road. So it's no longer a public road anymore.
It needs to be, if they're going to try to establish that it's a privately owned roadway or something like that, they're going to have to post something showing it. Like you said, they just had ropes and cones and a sign that said private road. That's actual posting of it, that it's a private roadway. I talked about it, how I'd gotten pulled over by a security guard from a local factory that was in our city. And I was going down an actual public roadway, and this person pulls me over, and he was actually out there running radar on a public roadway, trying to catch employees of this company on their way into work. And, the whole thing, it was just amazing to me how they acted and how they thought that they had a right on a public roadway to basically be law enforcement out there when they had no authority whatsoever. And it was one of those things where the guy actually pulled a firearm on me and demanding my information and demanding I comply with his requests. And he had no authority to do any of that. And it had my chief not shown up and told me basically walk away, he was going to handle it, that guy would have been in jail, and I would have towed their company car out. So, those are things. People come out and say, this is a private road, you can't be on here. Where's the proof of that? Where's your posting showing me that it is a private roadway? A great example of that are the industrial parks, where you have a road that comes off of a regular roadway. You go back in there and you have your shipping areas, and you have your areas where you have all the different trucking companies, manufacturing plants, and all that, almost like a strip mall area, but for industrial usage. And that road, if it's clearly posted, is a private road, and you go on that road, you're actually trespassing if you don't have the right to be there. So
yeah, the rite of passage. Yeah. Well, here's another example. This has to do with Scientology. We can't do one of these interviews without talking about Scientology. This was. Have you ever seen the BBC documentary with Louis Theroux? It was called My Scientology Group.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Not to be confused with Going Clear, but this was a BBC production. And Louis Theroux and his crew from the BBC went out to Gold Base, to the international headquarters. And there's a road called, or there used to be, it's not there anymore, the road's been totally torn up. But there was this small cul-de-sac, and it was called Sublet Road. Claire Hidley knows about Sublet Road. And there was houses on this cul-de-sac road. Now, all the houses were owned by the church. They were basically used as Sea Org housing. Mark and Claire Headley actually lived in one of those houses. They've all been leveled now. I mean, the road doesn't exist anymore. But back in the day, that road was a public road. And when Louis Theroux went out there with the BBC, Scientology had put up like a chain barrier with some generic sign that said private property, no trespassing. Well, Louis Theroux had a permit, because obviously it's a BBC production, so he had a permit to film on that road. And the infamous Catherine Fraser and Int-Based Security came out there and were like, no, you can't be on the road, you're trespassing. Riverside County Sheriff's Department came out, and ultimately, he was able to film on that road. But
right.
And then later on in the documentary, he went out there again to do some more filming on that road. Same thing happened. Looney Catherine Fraser showed up with Int-Based Security, and they were doing the same thing. They were trying to say that this is a private road. You
Right.
can't be here. And Louis Theroux is like, I have a permit from Riverside County telling me to go a little bit further. I'm almost done. To go a little bit further with that, I went out there to do, I was going to do a First Amendment audit and test that. I myself contacted Riverside County and spoke to actually a few different people with Riverside County, and they told me, they confirmed that no, Sublet Road is a public access road. It's not a private road. And then one of the ladies that I talked to, because I made 2 different phone calls, one of the last lady I spoke to, she actually asked me, basically the subject of Scientology came up. And once I mentioned Scientology, she went, oh God, like she, I mean, it was just, but no, I mean, she confirmed, no, that is it's a public road. And she's like, why they have it blocked off? I don't know why they get away with that or how they're able to get away with that. Maybe nobody's really pushed it, but now that the road has been completely, somehow they acquired that road. The road's been tore up. The road doesn't even exist anymore. All those houses have been leveled, but
You see that a lot with organizations and companies doing that, where they get into an area and they start trying to take everything that's around their property and make that theirs. And well, this is our road, you can't be on here. Well, no, it was built by tax dollars. Who gives you the right to tell me who can or cannot enter on this roadway? And you see that a lot, but until you have someone actually come up, I mean, me personally, if I knew a roadway was a public roadway and someone was going in and they're putting a chain across it and a sign saying public, saying that it's a private area, I'm going to go up with bolt cutters and cut that down. I'm going to take it in as evidence, and I'm going to do an actual police report on it, because they're obstructing people's rights of movement. But you see that a lot. And sometimes companies and big organizations, because they're dumping all this money into it, you'll see like bureaucrats and people like that will actually allow it to happen and not really push the issue with them. So, that's another reason why First Amendment auditing is important, is that, sometimes those bureaucrats and law enforcement, building department, and those kind of people, sometimes they need a little check of reality themselves, that they work for the citizens and not for these corporations or organizations. So, TBI firefighter, fun fact, Oregon police, and even the dog catcher can be trespassed. Well, in all honesty, in every state that can happen. If you have private property and they don't have explicit reasoning for them to come onto your private property, and you have it, especially here in Michigan, if you have it marked private property, no trespassing, and they enter on your property without reason, then yes, they can actually be found in violation of trespass. Well, we got a call that we have to be here and check this out. Well, now you know that it's not happening, and you need to just get off my property and let me be. You have a right to do that. You just have to be careful how you do it. Always make sure you're covering your butt and make sure you got everything on video or recorded, so that I personally would do a live stream and get it out there as it's happening. So if your rights are violated, it's out there in the public domain and there's proof out there that everyone can see.
Absolutely.
Let me see if we got any other questions. Oh wow, Chad, are you going for doing another long live stream?
Not tonight. I just wrote him back. I don't know. I didn't. Yeah, we were kind of. I thought he was joking. Next month we're doing the charity drive again in about 3.5 weeks. So yeah, that'll be at least 10 hours. So.
This one I find pretty interesting. Knowing your rights, being polite, keeping your mouth shut is the best thing when dealing with police. Argue in court, not the side of the road. That's always been one of my statements, is that if, say, I pull someone over and I'm giving them a ticket and they want to argue with me on the side of the road, I just don't do it. If you have questions, you have comments, there's a phone number on there to the court. You can ask them. If you want to fight it, then the court's the place to do it. I'm not going to stand out here and argue on the side of the road about things. So, thing is if you come at someone with attitude, you can't be surprised they come back at you with attitude. And quite honestly, I remember someone telling me my first day on the job about cars going down the road. There isn't a car out there that you can't find a violation on one way or another. A lot of people don't realize you put a sticker in the back window of your car. In many states, that's considered a vision obstruction. You can actually be cited for that. I mean, I've always been one of those people. I let people write their own tickets. I'll pull you over. Hey, you were doing this, you were doing that. You lied to me. You want to argue with me. You want to cause a problem. Fine, I'll just go ahead and write the ticket out and send you on your way. You can argue it in court. Otherwise, oh, okay, I didn't realize I'd done that. Yeah, I'm sorry I was running late. Be honest with me. Don't give me a bunch of crap. You're more likely to walk away without a ticket than you would be any other time. So, I'm a human being just like everyone else is. And no one, a lot of people don't talk about that with law enforcement. We're just human beings. So
yeah, you get what you give.
Yeah. I mean, we violate L. Ron Hubbard's thing. We have the reactive mind. So that's how it
All
is.
right.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask about that. Let's see. Then that comes to our next one. How do you handle confrontations? What's your best advice on that?
Well, I believe there's a fine line between standing your ground, being assertive, and then just being a straight up a-hole. You can stand your ground and still be polite and professional and calm and cool, and that's what I try to do. I mean, I'm guilty of losing it. I mean, there have been times where maybe I raised my voice a little bit higher than I should have, depending on what was going on. But for the most part, I try in huge air quotes, to maintain my cool. Because my whole thing is like, look, if someone's being a total Karen or Darren, or, if somebody's wigging out on me, my whole thing is like, look, I don't make people look stupid. People make themselves look stupid. If someone wants to act like a complete, whack job and go full on Karen on me, I'm just going to stand my ground and document it. And because to me, like, again, it goes back to, I don't make people look stupid. People make themselves look stupid.
I think the hotel in Hollywood, I can't remember what it was called, where you went in there, they passed the First Amendment audit, no problem whatsoever. You go back and the lady comes out and says, nope, you can't film this place.
Oh, the Safari Inn. Yeah, the Safari Inn.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah.
So let's see. Enda Trading. Hello from Bali, Indonesia. Oh man, I love Bali. It's a wonderful place. Thank you for joining us. Let's see. Jennifer M. Nasty Nathaniel, will you be doing anything around the Long Beach area?
Actually, I probably will in June. I forget what weekend it is, but I'm actually going to be teaming up with an auditor from Orange County called First Amendment Rights.
Okay.
And she's from Orange County based auditor, and we recently did an audit in Long Beach of a gay bar. Actually, I wanted to be the first Amendment auditor to audit a gay bar.
I think I saw that one.
Yeah, we audited a place called Hamburger Mary's, which there's actually more than one. There's one in West Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
And, they even used to have one in Honolulu. It's not there anymore. But we audited the Hamburger Mary's in Long Beach, and we're planning on meeting up again to do some audits in a few weeks. I forget what weekend it is, but we were talking about it, and we're going to. We plan to do actually another gay bar in Long Beach. So to answer your question, yes, we actually do. Or we're going to do some filming in Long Beach.
Well, that's normally part of your stomping ground kind of area, isn't it?
Well, no, actually, Long Beach is it's right on the border with LA and Orange County. I mean, it's technically LA County, but I'm up on the Central Coast, so I'm like 3 hours from Long Beach. But
you got to remember, it's been probably 30 years since I was out that way, so it's been a while. Majan wants to know, do you carry a GoPro so you can record at all times, or what? I know we've talked about it before. What kind of equipment do you use when you're filming?
I normally would have a GoPro on me, but recently my GoPro, I had the Hero 5 and it crapped out on me.
Okay.
So I just haven't gotten around to getting another one. I mean,
Yeah, that's the same one I've got. I've got the Hero 5 Black, and one of the big problems I've got is, I don't know if you've ever had it, but the battery's swelling. And I can't even get them into the GoPro anymore. I had to actually buy new batteries for it. It has no real stabilization. I'm just not happy with it. But I'm not willing to throw down the money to buy a new one. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to buy a better camera all around for
Yeah,
doing live
I
stream.
haven't had that problem. I just haven't gotten around to getting another one. But I use a Canon Vixia camcorder. I really like those. Even if you get them new, they're like a couple $100 new. But I mean, if you're really on a budget, I mean, you can find them on Craigslist for like $60. I mean,
What is that you're talking about?
it's called a Canon Vixia. Like, I don't do audits with my cell phone. I mean, to me, and no disrespect, I know a lot of auditors now just use their cell phones. I mean, unless I'm live streaming, like when I was in Peace Arch Park earlier, yeah, I mean, I was live streaming from my phone. But if I'm doing an actual audit or any type of filming, you know, get a real camera, video camera, get a camcorder or whatever. You know, I don't like auditing with the cell phone. You know,
I'll
I
be
know.
honest with you. I've got the Samsung Galaxy, the 23, and that thing is just monstrous. I can't believe the quality of the footage that it gets. It's crazy. But my problem is do I want to waste all of my memory on trying to record content? So
Well,
that's one of the things.
and the thing too is, like, depending on what kind of cell phone you have, a lot of these cell phones cost twice as much as what a camcorder would cost. And with a camcorder, you got better zoom, you got image stabilization. Plus, I mean, I just prefer a camcorder than,
I was just looking them up. You can pick Vixia's up for $150.
yeah, they're not expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
How hard?
at all.
Sorry to interject. How hard is it to, like? I was wondering about the camcorders, but how do you go live on a camcorder? I don't get it.
No, you can't go live. I mean, that's what I was saying just a minute ago. Is that, yeah, the only time I'll use the cell phone is if I'm if I have to, if I'm doing something like I did today, you know, where I was walking around in Peace Arch. Hey, everybody, it's Peace Arch Park. Hey, look, I'm in Canada now. You know, I mean, obviously, I'm just using my phone because you know, it's. But if I'm actually shooting a video, like a real video, I'm going to use the camcorder. The only time I'll use the phone is if I have to go live. Like, let's say I'm doing an audit and things start getting really hairy and the cops show up and I think I need to go live for safety. Yeah, then I'll you know, I'm always queued up to go live. I always have the phone ready so I can hit the live button if I need to.
All right, cool.
Let's see here. I was just looking at a couple of things. But yeah, I think that as long as the camera does have the ability to live record, you should be able to live stream it as long as you can hook that to the computer. You know, I mean, like, well, Chad, you're using pretty much the same camera that I use, the Logitech. It's very inexpensive and it's made specifically for streaming live. So it's never been I'm just reading the comments there. So it's a good camera. It has good quality on it. Has the ability to do that. But when you're outside doing these audits and everything, you need something that's either going to be able to stream via, you know, the signal that it gets like a cell phone does, or you're going to need something that can record. Let's see, Nathan. This is from Apostate Alex. Thank you for joining us, Alex. Enjoyed your live stream earlier. Have you had to do some legal training to protect yourself and make sure you are all clued up on the laws? What happens when you encounter a cop who isn't clued up as you are?
I mean, obviously, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not like, you know, I'm no legal people, but I try to. I mean, as far as legal training, Google searches, you know. and also, like I said, I have a close friend who's an attorney. He's educated me about a lot of things, or people like Merb, that talk about, traditional public forum. Like I learned that from Merb, the difference between traditional public forum and non-traditional public forum, not to keep, dwelling on that, but but as far as like coming across, like some ignorant cop that's trying, or maybe it's a situation maybe where he's not ignorant. I mean, there are certain cops out there that just, like I said, they don't like First Amendment auditors. They don't like what we're doing, and they just don't care. They're, hey, tell it to the judge, and they're going to hem you up regardless. And yeah, you can argue with them and tell them, and I have done that. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. This doesn't actually have to do with me. A guy that I recently met up with here in Washington State. He's called No Bones Pressed. He recently did an audit of a local newspaper, in his area. It was a local, the local newspaper for that county or whatever. And they called the police on him. And one of the things that one of the local police officers was trying to tell him, well, he asked him, he's also, are you audio recording? And of course, No Bones Press was like, yeah, I'm audio recording. Well, you do understand that, like, Washington is a two-party state. And, of course, he came right back at him with, like, basically, that doesn't apply to what I'm doing, because when it comes to the whole two-party consent, it's the same in California. That only applies to confidential communications. It doesn't apply in places where there can be no reasonable expectation of privacy. But there's now, I don't know if that, I have a feeling that the cop just said that because he was trying to bully him and get him to stop doing what he was doing. But of course, he knows that, just like I know that. And once I forget how exactly he worded it to him, but he basically told him, like, that doesn't apply to what I'm doing. And, the cop quickly backed down. I mean, he didn't push it any further, but that's why I think the cop was just trying to bully him.
I also believe when it, if I remember correctly, the two-party system, when it comes to recording, deals with potentially private areas where no one else would be able to intercept that conversation and hear what's going on. Or in the case of a phone call, you have to have consent for both parties. Other states, like here in Michigan, as long as one party knows about it, it falls completely within the legal realm of it's okay to do so. So again, that's making sure you know your laws. And yeah, sometimes you may end up with a situation where you may end up getting cuffed up and you taken into the police department, but that's why we have courts of law.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. TBI firefighter, how do you deal with that troll Santa Maria police officer?
I haven't seen him in a while, but with him, it's basically just a thing of, he doesn't like me. Well, he doesn't like First Amendment auditors. So,
right.
The few interactions that I've had with him, I just, I give him back what he gives,
Right.
I wouldn't go. I don't want it to make it sound like. I mean, it's not like I think the guy is like corrupt or anything like that. The guy's just a Class A jerk.
Yeah.
He doesn't like me and what I'm doing, and I feel the same way about him, and just I haven't run into him in a while. He's a motor cop now, so he mainly does just like traffic and stuff. But if I ever ran into him again during an audit, if and when that ever happens, it would just be the same thing. If he wants to talk smack, I can throw it right back at him.
And that's the thing is that there are guys in law enforcement, and folks, you got to remember, they're human beings just like anything else.
Absolutely.
And there are some people that are just straight up a-holes, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's the kind of person that if they weren't a police officer, they were working at one of the big motor, car manufacturers or something like that, and you met them in a bar, they'd still be that kind of a-hole in that situation. Some people are just jerks. And,
yes.
That's the sad point about it. J Dice, very clever. It's important to be familiar with your own state law, local rules, especially if you plan to audit or waive Fifth Amendment rights at all. And that's that's one of the things we've been talking about is the fact that if you're going to do it, you have to be very know your laws. Don't get yourself hemmed up because you think you know something. All right. Contact an attorney, contact the state police, contact whoever it is that handles law enforcement in your area, because it all falls under different categories in each and every state. One of the things you have to remember is a city law cannot have a stronger penalty to it than a state law. It can't be more restrictive. State law trumps city and county. Federal law trumps state, city, and county also. So the big thing is make sure you know your rights, know your laws. And, if you're unsure on whether or not a law is in violation or not, best thing to do is cover your butt on it.
Yeah.
Make sure you have the right people in place. Let's see, here we go. Good one from Marjan. What about drones? Is the law different like the backyard? That was answered in the case from Kentucky where two young men were filming with a drone. A father came out and shot the drone down because his daughter was sunbathing next to their pool. Now they had a 6-foot privacy fence, and there's no way that these young men, unless they had come over and put a ladder up to that fence, would have been able to see this girl. Now they say that they were just exercising their constitutional rights of flying the drone. I got to question whether or not you filming a teenage girl sunbathing on a deck constitutes your First Amendment rights, or whether they're violating her rights. In a situation like that, where you have a 6-foot fence that's put up and you can't see through it, is that an actual invasion of privacy? Does that person have an expectation of privacy in that area? And the court said, no, you don't. Drones don't fall into that category. But you have to remember that drones, if they're over a certain size or weight, must be FAA licensed, and you must have training. Otherwise, you can get yourself in trouble with that also. You do much work with drones at all there?
No, I don't.
I think they're interesting. So now we've gone down through most of this list that we've been. Something else I forgot about. Let's talk about the narration. We know we get the outright beginning of the videos and things like that. What do you do about narration throughout your videos?
Well, part of the reason that I like narration is there are parts during an audit where, I call it dead space, where there's just, okay, yeah, you do your little intro. Nathaniel, I'm here in the city of Blaine, Washington, and I'm going to be doing a First Amendment audit of Starbucks or whatever,
right.
And then, you say where you are, and then I like to do a little history, like Starbucks was founded in, 1669 and, whatever. And, part of the reason I liked it, and it wasn't something I never really, I didn't think of it this way before. It was actually something that a friend of mine pointed out to me, is that, he was saying that I like the narration because sometimes, during these audits, until you get that point of contact where somebody comes out, gets in your face or questions you, or the police show up or whatever, until you get that point of contact, of course, that's what everybody's waiting for anyways. There's a lot of dead space, and this is just what he told me. And I've actually had other people say the same thing. The narration kind of, it kind of fills up that dead space. So you're not just looking at a building or a parking lot or a Honda Civic driving out of a parking lot or whatever.
Yeah.
You can actually, and something I found too, that compared to a lot of other auditors, not everyone, but a lot of auditors don't seem to know a whole lot about the places they're auditing. Not saying that you need to. I mean, you're there to exercise your right in public, so it's not a matter of right or wrong. It's just, for me, I like to know about the places that I'm auditing. What's the backstory on this? Like, for example, I started doing audits of Chick-fil-A, and I know there's probably some people in the chat shaking their head going, Chick-fil-A? Why do you want to audit Chick-fil-A? Well, Chick-fil-A has a history of being very homophobic, anti-gay, and their CEO, Dan Cathy, has donated a lot of money to anti-LGBT groups, and so when I'm doing my narration, I'll talk about those things, in addition to like when the company was formed and all that. So to me, it kind of fills up that dead space. That's why I like narration.
Yeah.
Well, we'll double it then. I'll hit them up too if that's their position.
Oh yeah. You know what's so funny about that? Not to get off on a tangent about Chick-fil-A, but I remember this was a few years ago. One of my good friends from back in Hawaii, came to Los Angeles. I was actually living in LA at the time, and I picked him up. And one of the first places that he wanted to go eat at, even before In-N-Out, was he wanted to go to Chick-fil-A. Now I had never even heard of Chick-fil-A, and I was like, okay, yeah, there's one in Santa Monica or wherever it was that we went to. And later, I mentioned it to my mom. I was like, yeah, I took my friend to Chick-fil-A, and she's like, why on earth would you, out of all people, want to eat at a Chick-fil-A? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you know about their history of being anti-gay. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And then I started looking into it. Like, anybody who wants to know about this stuff, just Google Chick-fil-A anti-gay, and there's all sorts of stuff that pops up.
The crazy thing is they were the first company that actually broke the cancel culture mold. When they came out against Chick-fil-A and said, they are this, and we're going to boycott them and all that. And then for the next 2 years, they had record sales that were basically triple what they'd had in the years before.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that it's really interesting how this works out. And it shows that, there's one thing about patience and being understanding and all that, but man, I don't, some companies get hit and they're boycotted and suddenly they lose a bunch of money. This was the first company that we'd seen that got hit like that and actually went even further than they had done previously in their financing. It was crazy how that came down. So, but we're at 1 hour, 40 minutes now. Let's start talking about one of the topics that we had for tonight, which was Scientology auditing. And if you can, basically walk us through what how you would set it up and what you would do going to a Scientology org to do a First Amendment audit.
Well, I think there was something like, okay, when it comes to doing a First Amendment audit of Scientology, I mean, this could apply to any place, that you're auditing. And, you're there to exercise your right to record in public and to test the responses of the staff, management, security, or whatever it is at that place that you're auditing to see if they're going to respect your right to record in a public place. That's the purpose of the First Amendment audit. Some people were asking me like, well, I want to start auditing Scientology so I can annoy them, and yeah, I'm sure they are annoyed by it when somebody shows up with a camera and starts filming, Pac Base or wherever, but you're not there to annoy them, even though they don't like it. You're there to exercise your right to record in public. So, like, even though I know it's going to annoy them and they don't like it, I'm there to show back when I was auditing Scientology pretty heavily, I was there to basically show them, like, I have a right to do this. You can't stop me. Right. And, if you keep giving me a hard time, I'm going to keep coming back and back and back. And eventually they got it. Like, when I did my interview with Aaron Smith-Levin, I told him, I said, people keep saying, do more Scientology audits. Well, the problem is like, well, I don't know if I'd really say it's a problem, but I don't think Scientology really needs to be audited anymore because they get it. Trust me. I mean, they know all about First Amendment auditors. I mean, when I first started doing audits of Scientology orgs, it was a completely different kind of situation. They didn't know who I was or what I was doing. I mean, of course, they quickly found out, but now they, just like a lot of places, I mean, they know all about First Amendment auditors. When they see somebody show up with a camera, they're going to know right away, oh, it's probably a First Amendment auditor. If they see me show up with this, I mean, I don't care if it's in Clearwater or LA, right away they're going to know who I am and what I'm doing.
Right.
good.
Well,
So
you're out there. You have a good following, and you have a lot of people know who you are. So it's going to be a little bit different because people are going to be expecting the auditing from you, and that's I think that's one thing. I think, and I like the fact that you brought that up, was that it's not about attacking or going at the people that are working there. It's about the organization itself and seeing whether or not they're going to allow you to express your First Amendment rights. And it's not about harming the people or the employees. And I think a lot of people don't realize they interconnect the people who are on staff or org as being the organization itself. They're only following out the orders of people above them, and they are, they believe that they're actually doing good. They believe in what they're doing. Going at them and attacking them and all that, you're not achieving anything. All you're doing is causing a situation where you're putting yourself in a situation that it doesn't need to be. And all you're going to do is further enforce that person's beliefs in the organization that they're part of. So I know a lot of people were looking at this. Oh, great. I get to go and, harass the crap out of the people working there. It's not about that. Not at all.
no, it's not. It's not.
What do you guys think? What do you guys feel? This is just, I'm a union guy, so I
Jeff,
feel
you're a
if
little
someone,
low on your volume.
I'll speak up. How do you guys feel about if they give us a problem doing an educational picket at their business the next day?
Well, you see that's different because you see, like for example, what Angry Gay Pope does. Pope's not doing a First Amendment audit. Pope is there to protest. Pope is there to annoy them, and you know what I mean, and get under their skin, which he does a pretty good job of doing that.
Okay.
So that's the difference between protesting and doing a First Amendment audit. But I guess maybe to answer your question, if they do, which they have done, I mean,
right.
They have harassed protesters and stuff. Hi.
You want to try our new olive oil drink?
Sure.
Well, we got this
thank
drink
you very
here.
much. I appreciate that.
Deviant Outcast. I'm going to put the banners up while
I appreciate
Nathaniel's
that.
talking. And basically, First Amendment auditing is a social movement that usually involves photographing or filming from a public space. It is often categorized by its practitioners, known as auditors, as activism or citizen journalism that tests the constitutional rights, the right to photograph and video or record in a public place. It legally comes about from Glick versus Cunniff in the United States court battle. And what they did was basically confirm that restricting a person's right to film in public would violate their First and Fourth Amendment rights. So that's a quick and basic Cliff Notes version rundown of First Amendment auditing. But basically what you're doing is you're exercising your rights to be in a public place and film or photograph. And that, you're on a sidewalk and you're filming something. If you can see it from public viewpoint, then it should fall under the purview of it's there. If you can look at it, why can't you film it? And that's
Exactly.
basically one of the tenets of it. So,
And we have a saying in the First Amendment auditing communities that goes, "You can't trespass the eyes."
right.
What I can see in public.
Yeah, and Shauna P. Law Nerd, exactly. I'd forgotten the exact name of it, but Plainview Doctrine. It's known by every police officer that in the United States, and that's basically, and as I had described it earlier, is if you can see it from a public place, then it becomes admissible. All right. If I'm walking down the sidewalk and I look in a car and I see a handgun on the seat of a car, that gives me cause. That gives me probable cause to deal with that. So you got, those are the things that we're looking at. It's the same principle that's being used in First Amendment auditing. So, you're just expressing your belief in the Constitution and your rights in the Constitution. And, it's different than the people who are doing the protesting and things like that. That's outside my realm of purview on that. I always think that as long as you're doing it lawfully and you're not disrupting everyone else, then you know, protest all you want, you know.
Mhm.
Let's also talk about the fact in many states, yes, you can stand on a public sidewalk and film, but you can't block the sidewalk or the passage of other citizens going down that sidewalk. Have you run into that before?
Oh, all the time. I've had cops tell me that all the time. You know, like, oh, you know, just that's typically one of the things that they usually say when they, you know, because obviously they know there's, I mean, you know, there's not much that they can do about it. You know, and a lot of them probably don't really care to do anything about it. But yeah, one of the things that one of the, you know, directives or whatever that they'll give is, well, you know, just don't block the driveway. You know, actually, I just did one the other day where the cop said that, all I ask is that maybe you could just stand over here, but basically like don't stand in front of the driveway. You know,
Yep.
and it's like, well, the only reason I'm standing where I am right now is because you're talking to me. So
yep. And that's, you know, that's generally how I am. If you're not violating the law, I really don't care. You know, there's no reason for me to be there. There are actually people calling in on you are actually abusing the, you know, taxpayers' dollars by bringing you in just because they're upset that you're there. So, you know, it's like the story I told of the guy who's walking down the street. He's got an AR-15 strapped across his chest. He's got 3 or 4 other guns on him, dressed like he's a SWAT member. And I see this guy walking down the street and I know exactly what he's doing. And then I realize his wife is behind him holding a banner that says, honk if you support the Second Amendment. And I had no problem whatsoever. Where I did have a problem is she's walking down a sidewalk with a 6-foot banner. Nobody can get around her. She's got like a piece of PVC pipe that she's using across the top of it to hold it open for everyone. My problem with that is, as long as you're not blocking people's ability to access the sidewalk and freely move on that sidewalk, I don't care what you're doing. He wasn't violating the law. Michigan has open carry laws. There was nothing wrong with that. But
yeah,
you know,
wasn't an issue.
When I showed up, you know, immediately he's got an attitude. He's ready to get in my face, and I'm like, nope. I'm just calling to make sure you're not having any problems. We've had about a dozen calls on you already. I'm just here to let you know I don't see any violations. I don't see a reason to have a problem with you. And that's how I was going to leave it till he turned and pointed the muzzle of the gun straight at my face. So,
yeah, I remember you telling me about that before.
Yeah,
so that one's a little bit different.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you a little secret. Well, I guess it's not really a secret anymore. But if you're doing First Amendment audits, and maybe a police officer is giving you a hard time, or maybe trying to give you some, you know, unlawful directives or whatnot, you know, the best way to get him to go. You know what the best way to get him to go away is?
What's that?
Let's see if you can take a guess, John.
No, I'm drawing a blank on that.
How about you, Chad? What's the best way to make a cop who's giving you a hard time go away?
I mean, I'm usually pretty nice to him, and you know,
Kill him with kindness. Yeah, that's about the only thing I can think of.
That's all I can think of. Yeah.
The best way, if a cop is giving you a hard time and you want him to go away and leave you alone, the best thing to do is tell them they're handsome, and then they'll get embarrassed and they'll want to leave.
That's funny.
I've seen you do that in some of your videos.
I don't have the balls to do that. You know.
Well, you better grow them if you're going to do the First Amendment audits.
Well, I'm just going to call Poe when I go into trouble.
Well, the only problem with that too is there's that small chance that the cop might be gay himself, and then he might want to stay. So, you know.
Yeah.
Here's a really good one, and I think you've broached this before, Nathaniel. What about the VA, Veterans Administration?
What if? Let's see. I'm looking at their question. One time they were not being nice to Robert, and I took out my phone to record, and the VA said I couldn't record. What is the law with that? Well, I mean, it depends I don't know the situation you're talking about, but were you inside the VA or were you out on the sidewalk?
Yeah, that all has a lot to do with it. Let's see. You know, you have to remember that inside of places, especially medical institutes, there are things like HIPAA laws and things like that. And the last thing you want to do is get yourself caught up in a HIPAA law violation, because it's a big pain in the butt. So let's see. Deviant Outcast. What I really don't get is what is the effect it has versus protecting people's rights. An official whose job is to secure people's rights would have ability to take corrective action, but a civilian, I don't think it's as much about protecting the rights of others as expressing your constitutional right. And that's one of the big tenets is that you have to, you have rights as a citizen. And First Amendment auditing is about making sure that people are educated about those rights. I think that's the best way I can describe it. When you go to some place like you're standing on the sidewalk, and like I saw the guy who was filming in a very high income area, and people were coming out, you don't have the right, you can't, this is mine. And no, the fact is that they need to know that if I can look in your window from the outside, I can video from there too. And it's just as much about educating the public and educating those people as it is protecting your rights under the Constitution of the United States. I don't think it's as much about defending other people's rights too.
Yeah, public education has a lot to do with it. I'm glad you said that, John. Not to cut you off, but
no problem. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm glad you said that, because that's a big part of it, or at least for me, it's about educating the public. I mean, that's one of the reasons I've never been into silent audits. I mean, they're not really as popular as they used to be, but you would have certain auditors that like to do these silent audits, where basically if they were approached by security or police or whatever, they just wouldn't say anything, And to me, it's like, I get the power in it, where the point I guess they're trying to prove is, well, I don't have to talk to you. But, we go on and on about how, hey, we're supposed to be educating the public. Well, how can you educate anyone if you just stand there mute? That's why I've never been. I mean, I'm not trying to say they're wrong. I'm just like, to me, I don't think, I don't really like doing that.
Yeah, that's what, when I began doing some First Amendment audits, that's part of my goal is education. Nom sana. In some countries, if you point at the wrong building, you could be arrested. Exactly. Well, not every country has constitutional rights like we have here in the United States, or they have in Canada. I don't know about British. Hopefully, Apostate Alex, if you're still on here, if you could give us some look into that. But
I know some UK auditors, yeah, and from what I've gathered, their laws are pretty similar, somewhat similar to, concerning public photography is similar to that of like ours or Canada.
Okay,
but there actually is a movement of auditors in the UK.
Excellent.
It's a smaller movement, but there is one there.
And I mean, a lot of us, we get very centralized. I'm from the United States. I live here, so my focus is on U.S. law, U.S. Constitution, things like that. I don't know about the Canadian Rights Act. I don't know about how it is in Canada. I mean, in the United Kingdom. So, those are all things, and that's why we keep pushing the point of know the laws of where you're at, because it can really come back to haunt you if you don't. It's crazy. Let's see, Apostate Alex. You're not allowed to take a photo of a police officer here in the UK. That's illegal, but otherwise it's a general rule. You can take a pic of anything in public, but not looking into property. Okay. So basically, like the guy I saw who was in the Hamptons or something like that, was filming outside of a jewelry store, and he had to be educated on the fact that it was perfectly legal for them to do that. And he tried to use the excuse, well, how do I know you're not casing me to be robbed? We have millions of dollars worth of jewelry in here. And I see that as an excuse from a lot of people. But, you have someone who's clearly out there. You have this, what is that? I see a lot of them with this big, long stick you put your camera on the top of that they use for doing their auditing. And, these guys are clearly out there doing that. One of them actually had a professional video camera that you'd see like for a news station. They're not there casing the place out. That you being very public about doing it.
Well, like I used to hear that at military bases. Like I remember the first military installation I ever did. It was Camp San Luis Obispo. The National Guard, and I remember one of the things that one of the MPs kept saying was, "Oh, terrorists do this," and they go. It's like, look, that argument just doesn't work, because here's the thing. I mean, come on. Let's use some common sense. If I was a terrorist and I was truly trying to case a place, to do some harm to that installation or whatever in the future,
Right.
do you think I'm going to do something that's like show up with multiple cameras strapped to my body, knowing that in itself is going to draw a lot of attention? I mean, like, come on, you know what I mean? Or not only that, but even the thing of like, well, what about when the Google Earth van, like that base, like, and I'm just using this one as an example, like Camp Sandler's Obispo. I can go on Google Earth right now and look at and get better images of that base where all the gates are and all the guard shacks than I can standing on the side of the road, filming whatever, the statue of the Huey or whatever. So
Right.
it's just that whole thing about, well, this is what terrorists do. That argument just doesn't work.
Right. Now, I can't remember, but I thought that like Area 51 was, you can't get that on Google Earth. I think there's certain ones that are blacked out.
Probably so. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
Trying to find it here on Google Earth, but oh well. That's the thing is there are certain things that, if you try to film them or like Google Earth or something like that, they're not going to show up on there because they're actually blacked out. Let's be honest. I mean, the things you find on Google Earth kill me.
Yeah, I mean,
oh yeah.
well, if I can interject, they don't want to show the aliens, so we can't see Area 51.
Right. Well, I think Xenu may have some kind of pulse tracking system that has stopped them from being able to film from at that location. So we have to remember those Thetans they're a nasty one. So, all right, guys. Well, we are at the 2-hour mark. And
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
I was about to say we got to get one of those out of you. So, folks, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, we've been able to enlighten you quite a bit. We had over 200 people at one point in the live stream.
Oh wow, that's a pretty good group.
That's really good. I'm really happy with that. Folks, if you have any questions or anything like that, you want to learn more about First Amendment auditing, make sure you head over to Nasty Nathaniel's site, and he works with a lot of people. I got to ask, has King Matt, who's beat his ass yet?
Who's what?
Matt the King, or King Matt, or whatever his name is.
Oh, Matthew the King. Yeah, that's a guy. He's a new auditor. He's got a small channel, but he lives in my area, and so, or actually, he just lives in the next town over. And so, me and him, being that he's local, and we've been going out quite a bit, and I really like working with him because one of the things that I found about working with a lot of the newer auditors, or the auditors that have like a smaller channel because they're just getting started or whatever, is they seem to be a lot more humble. And I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but some people, because a lot of these auditors, when I first started going out and filming with them, they were the new guy on the block. They were the small channel, and they were completely different people. And again, I'm not saying this applies to all of them, but there were some, when they first started, I mean, they were humble. They would be like, man, thank you so much for meeting up with me and auditing with me and yada, yada, yada. But then once their channel started to grow and they started getting more views, some of them get big headed. Again, I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but some of them let it go to their head, and all of a sudden, they stop returning phone calls or whatever. But I like auditing with Matthew the King, and he's our styles are similar, and I definitely I would encourage everybody to if you can subscribe to his channel. I would really like to see his channel grow because he's a good guy, and also too, it only takes about 2 seconds to press that friendly subscribe button.
I agree.
It's not costing you anything. And
no.
Let's see, Matthew the King. I think this is him. I'm checking his channel right now.
His avatar is like a drawing,
Yeah, like an AI kind of representation of him.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. New drone steps away from books, driving, got pulled over on the beach. Is that him?
Yeah. Matthew the King. But it's not one word, just Matthew the King. You know.
Right. Okay. So I'm putting his link to his channel in there. Folks, go ahead and check him out. Again, folks, thank you so very much for joining us. I hope that we've been able to enlighten you on a lot of things. Having someone like Nasty Nathaniel here is you're a gold mine of information and experience that is really, really helpful. I mean, you've even encouraged Chad to go out and start doing his First Amendment auditing.
Oh wow.
Yep,
That's
I'm
great.
Chick-fil-A tomorrow.
Yeah.
Will they be
All
open?
right.
Yeah. Well, while you're there, get me some of those nuggets because they rock. Let's see. Arrest Nate Nalpo from Elron Hubbard. Folks, again, thank you so very much for joining us. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm on my drive now. I am trying to get up to 3,000 subscribers on my channel. So make sure you hit that share, get the notice out there. Nathaniel, again, thank you so very much. If you'll hang out for a little bit after we're done here. And as always, folks, remember, we get one shot at this life. Make it count.
Thanks for having me, and I promise next time I won't be. It won't be from a Starbucks.
Oh, you're fine.
It's all good.
All right, folks. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. I've got Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm going to be back with some more DIY with the laser and some other DIY projects I'm working on. So thank you for joining me, and have a good evening.